and a very warm welcome to yet another episode of Impact Leaders with Simply Suparnaa, where we bring you inspiring stories of purpose-driven change makers creating real impact. But before I bring on this change maker to your digital screens, I'd like to start by invoking the higher power. Shakti has held me in good stead, and we'll start by reciting this very old Sanskrit verse, the Saraswati Vandana, that talks about dispelling the darkness of ignorance that resides in our hearts with the wisdom of knowledge. Ya kundendu tushara haradhavala, ya shubhra vastravrita, ya veena varadanda manditakara, ya shweta padamasana, ya brahmachitta shankar prabhutivi, devai sada vandita, samam patu saraswati, bhagavati nishesh jadyapaha. And now, without much further ado, let me bring on to your screens my guest here today, Simran Mulchandani, who's the co-founder and CEO of Rangeet. Rangeet has been awarded by SABERA last year as a social enterprise of the year. They've been empowering over 5 lakh children across 10 states in India through a digital platform that redefines learning by focusing on well-being, equity, and ecological consciousness. With a diverse journey spanning from fintech and JP Morgan and live music in Blue Frog to Myanmar and mangrove restoration and then now education reform. Simran is building hope for a future where nature and society coexist in harmony. Thank you so much, Simran, for what you do, and thank you for taking out time for being with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here. Thanks.
Simran, you have such an inspiring story. I mean, you've been somebody who has been extremely successful in his professional journey, an investment banker in New York, JP Morgan, and all of that. And yet you maintained that pull towards being able to do something for your country. So I want to map this journey of yours, of how it has actually, meandered through Myanmar into Bangladesh, into, the school in Mumbai, to finally forming Rangeet. Let's start with how you decided to move back to India.
Sure. I think if I look at the sort of heart of it, it's always been actually about keeping an open mind and heart towards the opportunities and the sort of things that life throws your way. Not getting sort of carried away by it, but also being open to it. So, I led a fairly conventional journey from, graduating out of college in the US, working for JP Morgan, wonderful years where I met amazing people and really learned the value of having great guides in your life. I in fact, just came back from Singapore where we had our 50th year reunion of JP Morgan, and I met some of my old bosses, and it was so heartwarming to meet them again. So really sort of heart, human connection really drives a lot of this. From JP Morgan in Singapore, where I was moved, I always had this feeling that I wanted to move back to India, but a little behind that was this feeling that I loved banking. I loved my colleagues. We did great things together. But I also felt, for me, and this is really a personal thing, for me, I just felt like, what was my legacy going to be? What is the real thing I'm doing? What have I created? And I couldn't find that answer. And banking always was this hamster wheel, year after year, running, working hard, bonuses, and then doing it again. And I just felt, okay, so where does it change? And so I had this opportunity to come back to India. You mentioned Blue Frog. My high school friend and I, we collaborated with a few others to start Blue Frog. That was an incredibly inspiring journey. We achieved a lot. And then I moved on from there around 2015. You talk about Bangladesh, that came later in the journey, but in 2015 or 2016, my wife Renisha and I and my 2 kids, Ishan and Samara, we were in Phuket on a family vacation, and I got in touch with my dear friend Alan Lauch from JP Morgan case. And Alan is a absolute maverick who told me this story of how his then 8-year-old daughter asked him this soul piercing question, which was, what if you were the last white rhino? How would you feel? How lonely would you feel? And that got him to thinking about the kind of planet we're leaving for our children. And that propelled Alan along his conservation journey. And the meeting in Phuket, which was supposed to be a lunch, and my kids always laugh about this lunch that went on from 12 in the afternoon to 10 o'clock at night, where he introduced me to this crazy idea of fintech fintech for good, essentially. And his whole theory was the narrative around climate change is so fear-based. And why do we need to have that fear, instill that fear in children? You're just going to damage their well-being. What we need to do is think about how we can flip that narrative to agency. Why would you protect something? You protect something because you love it. And so we'll talk later about Rangeet and its curriculum, but everything about it is about agency and building tools in children. It's about empowering children to take action and to take control of their lives. So back to Alan, I learned about this amazing project he was planning on getting involved in replanting 10 million mangroves in the Irrawaddy Delta using a crowdsourcing platform. That was such an inspiring project because not only did we manage to raise the money to plant those mangroves, 80% of the workers are women. And there's enough evidence to say that when women are the bread earners, economies do well. More kids went to school. There were more hospitals set up, and generally that region thrived. And what was really cool, and I know that I'm going to try to show you these photographs later, but you can see some of them behind me. Not only did the economy thrive, not only did the community thrive, but elephants came back. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, so there was this once barren land that was now overgrown with beautiful mangroves, and we got all this biodiversity back. So it was so inspiring, and it was really it was our inspiration for Karishma Menon and myself when we set up Rangeet, that we have to you inspire generations through storytelling and purpose. You don't frighten them into doing things, but you inspire. And so we'll talk about that. So we can.
Very interesting, Simran. Normally when I see of innovations done in the education sector or technology sector, what I have noticed is that there's a lot of collaboration and focus on STEM learning. Is along with a lot of government schools, there's focus on Tinker Labs and so on and so forth. But with Rangeet, there is a different approach that I see completely that focuses on ecology. I mean, that is something which is really the need of the hour. And yet we are working in silos. The corporate is working separately, the non-profit is working separately, the education system is working separately. So here I see as an attempt to actually form that bridge between what is our future going to be like and preparing our children for that future.
Absolutely, Suparna, you've hit the nail on the head. And maybe can I tell you a small story about how all of this came about? Sure. So around 2017-ish, so like I said, I don't know if I said this. Yes, I did. I said I have 2 kids. It would always trouble me to some extent because my wife Renisha and I would always tell our kids, be risk takers, step outside your comfort zone. But then it became apparent to me, it's easy to tell someone to do that when they come from privilege, right? Okay. And then at a similar time, an ex-JP Morgan colleague invited me to become part of a 4th standard class that he was teaching in a public school in Bombay. And that became that defining moment for me. because this fourth standard class had 8-year-old kids and it had 14-year-old kids. All the boys were 8, 9, and 10, age appropriate ish, and the girls were not. Why? They were being denied education. And I was fairly devastated by that day because it said to me that these kids are born into a birth lottery. These kids are born into poverty. They will never find their way out. And and then I, like I said, compared it to my kids, and I said, my kids can do what they want. They can fail. They can dust themselves off. They get up, and we try to instill things like gratitude in them. And what do you do with these kids? And so I came back from that day, and I was chatting with my co-founder Karishma, and I said, what can we do about this? We don't want to teach math or science better because there's enough, in there. But I also thought back, and so we did a lot of soul searching. I thought back to when I was doing my ICSE, and there's this one story I like to tell, which is in your history paper, you're made to study photographs of over 200 odd temples. And then you have in the ICSE paper, you get a photograph and then you have to write a 2-page essay on it. And I can't remember if it was 20% or 40% of the marks. And while I was writing my ICSE paper about the Sun Temple in Konark, I thought to myself, I'll never need to do this again in my life. And fast forward 50 years later, my kids are doing the same thing. So we're and as one of my board members says, we're solving the problems of a previous generation with education today. And what good is all of this if there are no elephants left to count? Or what good is maths if there are no, if there are no elephants left to count math and forests left to describe English? We're teaching all these things. Of course, we teach these things, but we need to change education. Education is not looking to the future. 5 years ago, Jensen Huang of NVIDIA said, every child must learn to program. Today, AI will do that for you. So what are these skills you need for the future? Do we teach you programming? What do we teach you? In 2000, we didn't know that a concept called a social media manager would exist. In 2025, what are the jobs of the future? And so those are the things we started thinking about. And let me tell you, this is not a poor school issue. It's not an under-resourced school issue. Like I said, my kids were also in this problem. And so these are the problems. It's systemic.
So now I want to understand from you, what exactly does Rangeet do?
Sure. So the main thing is Rangeet is a digital platform, right? And I want to be clear, it's not putting tech in the hands of children. Rangeet is for teachers to teach children, for parents to teach children. So we have this digital platform. It's a simple mobile app that you can use in a classroom. It doesn't require major digital literacy. It's super easy. It's in multiple languages. Currently, it's in English, Hindi, Marathi. So teachers use this to teach our social, emotional, and ecological knowledge, or we call it SEEK curriculum. Okay. And so they use this to teach in classrooms. And what does it do? It develops the skills that children need to thrive in the future. It develops agency. Like I said, agency is huge. Agency around, so it's what children can do around their physical, emotional, and mental health. That's one. Two, digital citizenship. We know what social media and and related apps are doing to children and their mental health and their well-being. So two, well-being around an agency, around what they can do, learning about, safety, so on and so forth. Three, it's about the action they can take in their lives for societal justice. You're seeing unfairness, you're seeing bullying, you're seeing gender-related issues. How does that impact a child and what can they do? And four, climate. So climate, so when we take a zoomed out view of well-being, we don't think of well-being as mental health. We think of well-being as here are things that really impact our youth today. What are the tools we can give them to navigate these problems? And so what is the agency we can develop in them so that they preserve their well-being? And I'm going to tell you one story. We've got tons of stories like this. But Karishma and I were visiting a school in Dehradun, and we're sitting in the back of the class, and the teacher is carrying on this wonderful Rangeet program in the class, and then says, "Children, the two founders of Rangeet are here. Come to the front of the class and tell us what you have learned." And we heard lots of beautiful stories that day, but the one that's will forever stand out in my memory is this little 10-year-old boy, Deepak, stood in front of the class and said, "I went through the Beyond Pink and Blue module of Rangeet. Beyond Pink and Blue is about gender. Okay? So it's not about girls and boys, it's about all genders." And he said, "My 15-year-old neighbor, Sarika, during COVID was being married off. And I learned that this girl was not going to be allowed to come to school anymore. And for me, that was really unfair because you've told me, teacher, that everyone has the equal right to education." And he was angry about it. And he told his teacher, "I want to do something, agency." Okay. We gave him the tools to think about what he could do, not sit back and feel bad about it. And so Deepak and his teacher talked to Deepak's parents, who then together went and talked to Sarika's parents, and they actually stopped the marriage.
Super,
I
super,
have
excellent.
many more stories like that.
So what I'm understanding from you is this curriculum is also dynamic because the application of it will be, so much more as opposed to just like pedagogy being said, you learn this by rote and then regurgitate, like you said, by rote.
Yeah. So it's all experiential, and we're very fortunate. I have to say, timing is everything. NEP, National Education Policy Framework of 2020 came out. Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who is an absolute, stalwart, talked about how we need to, transform our education towards more experiential, not didactic, but much more experiential. Then we were very fortunate again that in 2023, I talked to you about the early days of COVID where everyone was petrified that, oh my God, my kids aren't going to learn maths, right? I mean, then they realized that the kids' social emotional well-being was getting damaged. And so NCF 2023 really focused on well-being. Okay. Now, I'm going to take a second to talk to you about this. We were really fortunate to meet Kathy Hirsch-Pasek from the Brookings Institution, who helped really guide this. So what we
Also,
did
I
was,
just wanted to put on record that Rangeet and the app thereof is not a non-profit. It is a social enterprise, and
yes,
schools are actually purchasing that per child because
yes,
they find that value in it. And
absolutely,
this is across 10 states in the country and expanding with
yeah,
more schools, and not just private schools but also government schools. And the
yeah.
government schools, the interaction happens with the CSR funding by the corporates.
Yes. So in government schools, we do large scale district wide interventions. So our main work is in 4 districts of Rajasthan and in Mumbai, Pune, and now Nagpur, Nashik. And we've got phenomenal partners in corporate India who support these programs. And then with private schools, we work directly with the private schools. And one thing that we're very clear about is that the same curriculum that a little child in Bharatpur in Rajasthan in a public school will it will you know will go through is the same teaching materials that a school like Cathedral School in Mumbai or JB Pettit School in Mumbai will teach their children. So we wanted to flatten those inequalities.
So, in case there's anybody who would want to reach out to Rangeet, we're flashing out the website address. Through that, you can reach out to Simran. Essentially, private schools, public schools, CSR partners. But tell me, Simran, do you also encourage volunteerism as part of Rangeet? Young students, older people who may want to come and volunteer with Rangeet.
That's a great question. We'd love that. In fact, during COVID, some IB students were using Rangeet as part of something called CAS, their community service, to teach younger children who were, because everyone was living in silos, right? So so that was one. Two, we have encouraged, so actually we're encouraging teachers from more privileged schools to buddy up and partner with teachers from the government schools sometimes our private schools tend to live a little bit more as islands, and so to open up the communities and for everyone to work together for the betterment, because finally we want to encourage. I mean, we're very clear about one thing. Rangeet is for every child.
Right.
We don't want it to be for a privileged child. The privileged schools, they're already doing stuff. It's got to be for every child. And the teacher is the centerpiece of every classroom. And so we need to encourage teachers to work together. We need to build a vibrant community. And that's something we're doing. Actually, on July 31st in Mumbai, we're doing a big event with Pratham. Pratham is one of our amazing partners. Farida Lambe at Pratham is probably one of the most dynamic women I've met. Full of energy. And so we're doing this amazing activity with them with 200 odd teachers in Mumbai to felicitate teachers and to encourage teachers. Because without teachers, without happy teachers, we have no future. This whole thought that technology can educate children is a fallacy. You need technology to make teachers better and
So,
help
so
them.
on this note, Simran, we're seeing technology change as we speak, right? AI, blockchain. How do you see these in the future of education, particularly in underserved communities?
So, to the extent that I have a view into it, right? So the way Rangeet works, I'll have to give you a quick background to tell you how I'm informed, right? So we've created the curriculum, it's beautifully laid out with graphics. The teacher uses it in the classroom. It's taught as a curriculum, or a teacher can actually go into the app and type in a keyword and say, you know what, I'm seeing anxiety in my students, and I'm seeing bullying. Okay, and they can literally type these words in and search, and out of our over 1,000 activities, they will get they'll get like targeted activities to teach their children. So they can either run a 4-year curriculum, which is how long our curriculum is, if it's taught once a week for an hour, or they literally get personalized information about how. So now we're taking that a step further. There's two parts to it. One is teacher well-being. Teachers are overworked. They Some of them are losing that they're filled with so much admin that the reason they became teachers is being lost. So in every school we've talked and taught in, they always talk to us about teacher well-being. So we are working with an organization in Bangalore called Behavioral Foresight, run by an amazing man called Mon Brockman. And they've created the teacher well-being modules for us. And what a Rangeet teacher needs to do is just type in free-flowing English or in free-flowing language. It's going to be in multiple languages. This is a problem. And the app will give you well-being tools. The teacher, okay? Because we were very clear, if we're not going to look after the teacher, then we're doing half the job. Now we're moving to a space where teachers will be able to talk to the Rangeet app and get activities. Hi, I'm an EVS teacher. I'm a geography teacher. I want to teach children about pollution in my classroom. Can you give me an activity or a game that can help me do this? Or SDG 4 or blah, blah, anything. And Rangeet will serve up for you everything you need. Coming to your question, that evolution, we didn't even start off with an app, by the way. We started off with materials. Our entire journey has been informed by teachers. Every community we go into and we ask teachers about their problems. So till now, we've developed technology as a response to teaching needs. And as we see AI is dangerous as hell, but if harnessed properly, it can be used extremely powerfully. And the way we are planning to use it in Rangeet is for personalized learning and to be the teacher's helper. The teacher's helper for their own well-being and for developing the well-being of all students. And I just want to add that when you mentioned that we're a social enterprise, I want to just add this one thing. When we put Rangeet together, we wanted to do one price for everyone because we want equality, and that price had to work for the poorest schools possible, and it had to work at scale. And so we studied what India spends on education in the public system, and we priced it at 1% of that. So if India spends 40,000 rupees, 50,000 rupees a year, that's the statistic, a year on a child in the public system, Rangeet costs 500 rupees per child for the year. And these are such important things that children need to learn, that we said, you know what, our system has to work so that it works at 1%, at 500 rupees a child, because otherwise it's not going to work.
Simran, this has been quite an enlightening conversation. I would definitely, encourage schools, encourage corporates to look up what Rangeet is doing. As a parting thought, I would want to understand from you why the name Rangeet, and finally, what does success mean to you 5 years from now? Is it the number of students you've kind of touched? Is it the shift in mindset? What exactly is it, that impact that you're looking at?
So the first question was Rangeet. So Rangeet's entire pedagogy is focused on play. And I don't mean free play. By play, I mean guided play. So stories, books, poems, art activities, role play, games, right? And so we just came up with the word Rangeet, which is a made-up word, and it comes from the two Hindi words Rang and Sangeet, color and song, and to signify and to that we're all about play. And what is success? The conventional way of doing it is to say, 100 million children or whatever, but those are numbers. For me, success is, remember what I told you about Deepak and his and stopping that child marriage? For me, that is success.
Super.
For me, success is a group of children in Rajasthan who petitioned their tehsildars to build a tube well because they were angry with their parents and their adults in their village for wasting water. That's, for
Super.
me, all of those things are success. Everything else follows from that.
Thank you so much, Simran, for doing what you're doing. We're hoping to see more of your work through SABERA 2025. And hopefully, when I'm in Mumbai next, maybe we can catch up and I can take a first-hand, review of what Rangeet is doing and in schools also.
I'd love to
So,
do that. I'd love to do that. Thank you.
all the
It'd be an
best to
honor to
you.
meet you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.